Another day, another good change for Star Wars Legion. This one is regarding movement. Now the first part of it sounds very tame, but the second part I actually think is massive. Let's jump right in. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you. If you want to, I'll try and leave a link in the description. Basically, this first part is regarding movement and how if you were basically against a wall, say maybe like a building, and the building had a 90-degree corner, technically, if you were placed against that wall and you used the movement tool, you couldn't hug the wall going around it, because if your base doesn't fit, you can't go. I'm very badly explaining that, but that's the problem essentially. Your base moved along the movement template, and if your base touched terrain, then it wouldn't work. So if you were trying to go past a barricade and the template just was right next to it, you actually couldn't do it because the base would have hit the barricade. A lot of people just didn't play it like that because they didn't understand it, and it's actually a pain in the backside, so maybe chose not to. But for competitive gamers, this was a problem point. Now, what they're doing is simply you use the movement tool, you can place yourself at the end as normal, and you can place yourself anywhere in the middle as you normally would. The difference is that you pick yourself up and put yourself where you want to. You don't slide along it, if you will. Basically just cutting out this stupid case where you can't get in places where you should be able to. All around, just a really positive change, but only minor, but it was just an awkward rule, okay? The next one is actually where it's important. Well, this is important, but the next one's big. Now, effectively here, big rules to climbing and scaling. So they actually say that climbing has been eliminated from the game. Sorry, not climbing, clambering has been eliminated from the game. And units that have this, along with expert climber and scale, have been revisited. They don't necessarily say in what change they're going to be made. Maybe that'll be different depending on the model. But effectively, moving over terrain is getting so much easier. For example, the barricade that I just mentioned earlier, considering that a barricade is lower than the silhouette of a trooper unit, you will just be able to move directly over it for free. Now, this doesn't apply to notch bases. It is only like troopers without a notch, but still very big. So yeah, you can literally see there, miniatures can make standard moves onto or through obstacle terrain that is shorter than the height of a moving unit silhouette. So if you're a trooper unit without a notch, you can just move directly over barricades and stuff like that. As long as it's not very big, it's not causing you a problem in terms of movement. Now, I'm guessing that might change if you want it to, if you want to set some terrain as difficult terrain and it's like an area terrain. We don't actually talk about that here, but maybe they will change that as well. But that's big in itself, right? There'll be times where somebody's behind a barricade and maybe you can't have the movement go around the barricade to get to them, and you can't go over the barricade without shortening your movement to the range 1, speed 1, then you couldn't get to them. Well, now you'll just be able to run straight over the barricade. It's a little bit weird in a sense that you'll just not be slowed down in any way, shape or form, but it will make moving a lot easier. And then it gets bigger than that. Climbing is also changing. When I first learned the game, I thought the way that climbing is going to work is the way that it will work in Star Wars Legion, but obviously I was wrong. Effectively, climbing now sort of works like it's difficult terrain. You just have to do a speed 1. So let's say you have a building that's less than height 1. It has to be less than height 1, by the way. Or if you're at height 2, then it's like height 1 from above that. But basically, let's say you're going onto a piece of terrain that's higher than the silhouette. Normally you would have to move to it, touch, climb up, etc. Now you'll just be able to get close to it and then do a speed 1 straight onto it. As long as it's lower than height 1, that's it, which is pretty crazy, right? Because a lot of terrain is like height 1. Buildings generally sometimes have parts to them which are height 1, so you'll be able to just literally walk onto a building, which sounds crazy, but I guess we're in the future, right? And they say in our playtest, opening the high ground to all armies allowed for some very exciting tactics and emergent strategies, as well as really unleashing players' imagination to create and utilize exciting new terrain setups that added to the game experience rather than hindering it. Yeah, terrain in my experience was very sort of make or break for the game. Sometimes it would really do you over as well, and sometimes it would really help you. If you could place yourself on a building, well then you knew you were going to be very, very hard to get to. So it was a very strong vantage point, and that could really dominate the game for you. Overall, this will still have tactics and strategies around it, but it's just going to be a new sort of mindset that we need to adopt. I do find just running over a barricade to be a little bit weird, but I think overall this is a positive change as well. Now that concludes the updates that we're getting before the January core rulebook actually comes out. Obviously there'll be some extra changes in there. We'll need to know what's happening to these units that have climber and stuff like that, right? But I suspect these are the big things that are changing, and overall I think they're really incredibly positive. I will probably try out a game of Legion. I might even go to a tournament just to see what these rules are like, see how it's working, see if it's something that's actually getting me excited. I like the sound of them, very positive in my opinion. I can see how some people might sort of begrudge effectively the lack of realism, but I think it's probably better for the health of the game in the long run. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I do hope you have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.